Thank you for joining our webinar, Financial Impact of Asset Management and How to Manage Maintenance in a Digital World. Thank you very much. We have a great panel of speakers today and great presentation. Students are waiting for you. So I'm Kevin Devecioglu. I'm the Managing Director of Bimser International. Today with me, I have John Giordano from String Cooperman. I have Grayson Hoberg from Kerr Consulting, and I have ETR Gonzalez from Bimser International. Today we'll be addressing financial impact of asset management and how to manage maintenance costs in the digital world. First of all, I would like to get started with a brief company presentation about who we are and what we do before we get into details of financial impact of asset management with John Giordano. So, as a company, as Bimser International, we are a software development company since 1998. And as a digital transformation enabler, we believe in simplicity. We help companies simplify their processes. That is how we position our products. As we are a group of companies, we have our software development center and our parent company based in Istanbul metro area. We have another company in Europe for our European sales operations, and as Bimser International, we are based in New York with our team. So as a group, we are about 150 people. Bimser is a certified SAP vendor, a Microsoft Gold partner, and Acumatica independent software vendor. So let's take a look at our product range. So we are a very focused company as an enterprise software maker. We only have 4 products, and that's what we focus on. We have IBA for workflow and records management. We have BEAM for asset maintenance, facility, and purchase and management operations. We have QDMS for quality, risk, and compliance management. And finally, we have Ensemble for business process management. Then we look at the next slide, we'll see how we position our products. Ensemble is more of a managerial tool with performance management and balanced scorecard capabilities. We have IBA, BEAM, and QDMS. They automate processes. 4 of our products can work standalone. They can be integrated with each other, and they can be integrated with any ERP, any CRM platform available in the marketplace. They work on cloud, work on-premise, and we have mobile apps available. So we have up-to-date technology for all of our products, and we are still investing in it. Then we look at our implementation figures. You can see by the end of last year how many implementations we have done globally. So these figures also show a number of our clients globally as well. So we have IBA with the deployment of more than 450. We have BEAM deployed more than 300 times. QDMS implemented more than 750 times, and Ensemble more than 150 times, and still counting. Let's look at some of our references for quick, just to give you some ideas about who we have been working with. We have United Nations, one of our references, using our document management system for refugee tracking. We have 3M using our records management and workflow engine in 17 different countries. We have AstraZeneca used IBA in various locations globally. In pharma industry, we have Bridgestone as a manufacturer. We have Ford and Renault Nissan Alliance, some of our references. Also, we have ArcLight movie theaters based in California. We are using IBA to manage their purchasing operations in association with their ERP system. So in a nutshell, this is who we are as Bimser International, and that's what we do as an enterprise software maker. So what I like to do is that I like to turn it to John Giordano for him to address financial impacts of asset management. John, would you like to take it from here?
Yeah, hi Kevin. Thank you for that introduction. So today, what we would like to talk about is really, Kevin approached me to talk about kind of asset management and some of the effects that might be coming down the road as a result of some new accounting guidance. So if we could move the slide forward. Just like to introduce myself briefly, as well as one of my partners, Michael Myers, who'll be on the call with me. So again, I'm John Giordano. I'm an audit partner at Citrin Cooperman. I'm the manufacturing and distribution co-practice leader. My partner on the call, Michael Myers, is also an audit partner. For those that don't know much about Citrin Cooperman, we're a Northeast regional accounting, tax, and business advisory firm offering a full suite of services from your traditional audit and tax all the way down to your other consulting project, transaction advisory services, valuation work, state and local tax, as well as IT implementation, other project management in that space. We have offices located along the East Coast from the Boston metro market all the way down to the DC metro, with the most local offices here in Manhattan as well as in Melville, servicing the New York region. Primarily, we service middle market companies where our focus is to build long-term relationships and become a trusted advisor with our clients. So that's typically the space that we service. So if we just want to move on to the next slide, please. Again, we're going to walk through today a brief introduction. We'll give an overview of some accounting changes that might affect, again, with the focus on asset management and minimizing maintenance costs, the impact on the business that these will have, and again, some proposed next steps for practitioners and those alike. So when I was asked to discuss this topic and some accounting changes, one of the things that came to mind is the new Financial Accounting Standards Board Codification 842, which is with leases, which is what we're really going to dive into today, and again, give a little bit of a background as to how that will impact the asset management. Slide, please. Okay, so again, just a quick background. The new standard has come about basically because of criticism on the old standards and how there really wasn't convergence with a lot of the international standards. They felt it was very complex, it wasn't transparent, and there was a need for a worldwide convergence of how leases were being looked at. So the FASB, which is the Financial Accounting Standards Board, and the International Accounting Standards Boards were working together to bring pretty much all leases onto the balance sheet. By that I mean, under the past guidance, not all lease arrangements resulted in the company having an asset or a liability. In some cases, some of the leases were classified as what we call operating leases, by which they would only be expensed as paid, and all that would be required in the financial statements with regards to these are disclosures within the commitment section telling the reader how much is going to be paid over the life of the lease. But again, there was no net resulting liability and or asset on the books associated with these operating leases. So that was the old, and if we just move on to the next slide, you'll notice I have outlined here under the existing guidance, as I alluded to, lease classified as either a capital lease or an operating lease. And under the existing guidance, only capital leases are recognized on the balance sheet of lessees. Under the new guidance, lessees will recognize almost all leasing arrangements on the balance sheet, which will result in more assets to be accounted for in your fixed asset inventory register to be tracked by management and depreciated. The new accounting standard will classify leases into either a capital or a financing lease, which my colleague will speak a little bit about later on in this presentation. But again, the major difference that we want to highlight regarding these is we will have a change in the way leases are accounted for today versus under this new standard codification. And I've outlined here on the slide some of the effective dates for these, so the practitioners and users alike can get an understanding. So for private companies, it'll be for fiscal periods after December 15, 2019, which will be calendar year 2020. For public companies, their implementation year is calendar year 2009, which will be fiscal period starting after December 15th. And then if you're a financial statement issuer, comparative statements must be restated using the new modified retrospective transition method, which would basically show both periods under the new guidance. taking us into the next slide, you notice we highlight here for you, which we've entitled "This is Then," which is pretty much now until the new implementation goes into effect, again for 2019 for public companies, 2020 for private companies. So under the old accounting rules, there was a bright lines test for capital leases. The test usually fell with four key criteria. There was a bargain purchase, there was 75% of the economic life of the asset, 90% of the present value of all the future payments under the lease, or a transfer of ownership at the end of the lease. If your current leases had one of those four criteria, they would fall into what is now referred to as a capital lease and go on the balance sheet as an asset and a respective liability. If it did not meet one of those four criteria, it would be classified as an operating lease and would remain off balance sheet. There would be a P&L charge for the rent expense as it was incurred, but no financial statement impact to the balance sheet just the balance sheet. I meant the assets and the liabilities. The capital lease would have under a capital lease, you'd still have an asset and a liability, which closely aligns to the way the new guidance is directing you. Another concept that goes away under this new guidance will be that of deferred rent, in which you were required to straight line payments for any operating leases, creating that liability. So that was then. Under the new accounting rules, which I've been alluding to throughout our conversation, is that now you'll have no more bright lines test in the criteria for establishing financial leases. There'll be the classification for operating leases and capital leases, both of which will result with the asset going on the books. You'll have a capital lease or a financing lease, which will be accounted for. If it falls under the classification of a financing lease, the P&L charge will still be to a lease expense, but again, you'll have the recognition of both an asset and a liability. Same for a capital lease. For a capital lease, there'll be no change to the way the accounting for a capital lease is handled today. So the only change is really on the operating lease side, for which it'll now have to go on the sheet. Mike?
Hi, everyone. So just to follow up on what John has been saying, so now looking at the criteria for capital lease versus finance lease, which is the old versus the new, you'll notice that the criteria are essentially the same, except with the key part in bullets 2 and 3 and 4 rather, and the addition of a 5th bullet. So as John alluded to before, the old way of recognizing a capital lease was the bright line test, and the bright line meaning an actual number that you had to reach, meaning 75% of the useful life of the asset in bullet 3 and 90% of the fair value of the asset at lease inception in bullet 4. If you notice under the finance lease, which is going to be under the new standard, they removed the bright line and kind of they've made it more of a judgment call. So as opposed to 75% of the useful life, they've now made it a major part of the useful life. And similar to the present value piece where it says, it represents substantially all of the fair value, not necessarily 90%. So it brings more of an element of judgment into it when determining, if any of these criteria are met. And that, I think for the time being, a lot of people will potentially lean on the older numbers as kind of a guide. And as time goes on and people will kind of determine, maybe some more qualitative factors instead of the quantitative factors to determine whether those 2 bullets apply for, applying for a finance lease. And then the 5th one that they've added now is a specialized asset with no alternative use. So meaning it's something that's specialized to your business and after you're done with it, it has no alternative use. That would also now qualify, as a finance lease. Next slide. So the key question, after hearing John and I talk about all this, and a lot of it, is can be somewhat technical is, how will it impact your business, right? How does this impact my day-to-day, my financial statements, et cetera? So, the first thing will be potentially having to accumulate, lease data and trying to use that to conform to the new rules, because a lot of times, there's certain leases that maybe, the company necessarily keep track of copiers and et cetera, and smaller leases. Obviously your building or your place of business, you may have a little bit more of a handle on. All of these types of leases now are going to have to be gone through to determine if they qualify, under the new standard. And that's going to obviously lead into the potential of having to acquire new software or implement additional resources in order to be in compliance with this guidance. And that's kind of where, the two pieces of, the three pieces of these presentations kind of come together. Obviously, new accounting policies will have to be implemented, in your financial statements, and along with the presentation, you're going to have in your footnote disclosures the new accounting policies regarding this to let a user know that this is how you're now accounting for leases. And as I mentioned before, there'll be, there could be significant judgments and estimates that you'll have to account for. The disclosures obviously will be, more robust. Your current disclosure on long-term operating leases will no longer be part of the financial statement. So as of now, operating leases, as John mentioned, are not on the balance sheet, but are instead in your commitment footnote listed out so that each year what the company is committed to from a lease perspective. So that will no longer be part of the footnotes. And you also have to, as with any long-lived asset on your balance sheet, the new right to use, asset on the books, that's going to have to be evaluated for potential impairment. Next slide. So how else will this impact your business? And obviously, you're putting an asset on the balance sheet. You're putting a liability on the balance sheet that were not there before. So many of the ratios that management and ownership will use to kind of gauge how the business is running will dramatically change, and that needs to be taken into account when implementing this standard and when having kind of an expectation of what some of these ratios are year over year. For example, the current ratio, your current assets may not change, but your current liabilities will now include the current portion of that, the liability on the books. Obviously, the debt to equity ratio is going to increase because your debt, compared to your equity before and after the implementation of the standard is going to be quite different. And if you have a large lease commitment, that number your numerator could increase dramatically. And that's something that's going to have to be taken into account, and also your calculation of EBITDA as well. So the biggest issue we've been with our clients and people have been, and bankers especially, is that with all these changes now on the balance sheet, there's a large potential that many companies are going to violate loan covenants as they currently are. And, it's something that you'll need to discuss with your bank to determine if, that, hey, do we need to, amend the loan documents to make sure that, just because of an accounting rule, we're not now violating covenant ratios and stuff like that. And there's also, other than the ratios, you have restrictive covenants such as, you can't have new debt, new liability on the books necessarily without getting bank approval. A lot of companies are limited on their capital additions that they're allowed to make. So all of a sudden, if you have this big right-to-use asset on the book, that could potentially cause issues with the bank covenant there. So it's all going to, these are all things that prior to the implementation of the standard is, the company is going to have conversation with the lender to make sure that these are all things that are taken into account, that you're being reactive and not proactive. And the last slide here is, so road to implementation. I think the first thing you need to do is look at your lease contracts as they are now. Determine if you have any contracts that you may not think are a lease. They may contain a lease depending on the language in the contract. So that's something that management will need to look at. You identify, once you've determined a contract contains a lease, you have to look at the key terms of the lease. And based on those terms, as we discussed, we'll determine the classification, whether it's operating or finance. And then after that, the measurement and the calculation of the effect on the balance sheet, where you'll have to record these amounts, the asset and the corresponding liability. And that's all we have at this point for this presentation.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, John.
Thanks, Tim.
For sure.
Great.
Yeah, thank you.
Great insights and a lot of important things to learn for any company, definitely, and especially for the asset management. That's really, really vital. Thank you for keeping it. And please stay with us. We may have some questions in Q&A session, so we can address them all together. Now I'd like to turn it to Grayson Hopper from Kerr Consulting. And Grayson, would you like to take it from here?
Yes, please. Yes. Welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure to talk to you or meet with you. Next slide, please. So a little bit about Kerr Consulting. We are nationwide. We have clients in every state and in 23 countries. We have consultants in 19 locations across the U.S. And we're CPAs, training specialists, developers, technical engineers. We don't do accounting. We don't do audits. We implement ERP systems and other items for you. Next slide. So the things that we do for the clients, we sell and implement ERP systems where all the Sage products we do, and a few other ERP systems, Microsoft Dynamics, Abelia, AccountMate. On the ERP systems, there's a wide range of products that are available out there. For example, under Sage, Enterprise Management X3 is targeted for larger companies up to enterprise-sized companies, many billions of dollars in revenue, and manufacturing, distribution, finance. And then, for example, Sage Intacct really does a phenomenal job at service companies, nonprofits, size company, but it has a slightly different focus on what you use the software for. So and then there's also CRM, HRMS, fixed assets, things like that, that all these companies sell. We also do managed services, automating your IT side of the world so you can focus on the business. We do development, building things for you, rolling up systems into one. If you have multiple databases or financials, we can consolidate into one system. And then we've built a lot of applications or worked with companies on different applications, and you're going to be walking through one of them right now. And I'll leave that to questions at the end of the conference here. I'm done.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Grayson. So we talk about asset management. We talk about coming new regulations about assets, and now let's talk about how to manage assets and how to manage maintenance operations digitally. Now I'd like to turn it to Itier Gonzalez. So software engineer at Bimser International. And here, would like to continue.
Unmuted.
Thank you, Kevin. So what I'm going to do is just cover a couple of slides in terms of how BEAM, our asset and maintenance management system, can help companies either maintain and manage their assets. And then I'm going to log into the demo environment and just show you a quick overview of the things that we can do with this product. So before, let's just take a look at the modules that are available. For example, we have our basic package, all of those operations who are related to asset management, inventory management, maintenance, and personnel management modules. Because every time we talk about maintenance, we're going to be talking about 3M, man, machine, and material. And so each company is going to need at least 3 or even the 4 modules here on this left side to manage all of that. In terms of the maintenance operations, we offer 3 different types of tasks. They can be either periodic, preventive, or corrective. So, for example, if there is a problem with one of the machines and we want to create new tickets, then we can create corrective maintenance operations. If it's something that has been planned over the next few months, then that's preventive. And if we are thinking about just predicting new failures, then that's the predictive part of it. And BEAM is a product that is always evolving. We take very seriously all the feedback that we get from our clients and when we talk to prospects. And so, for example, we have included more functionality within the system to include maybe the purchasing management module, the energy management services, or facility management modules in here. And just to let you know a little bit more about BEAM. So, for example, it's a modular product, which means that each client can decide the modules that they need. And so it makes it more affordable since you're only paying for what you need. And it's also scalable. We're going to grow with the company. You can have today maybe just 10 users. Tomorrow you can have 100. And we're going to be able to support you anyway. This product also has the workflow capabilities running underneath. If you remember from Kevin's presentation at the beginning, he mentioned EBA. That's our document and workflow management system. And what allows us to do is basically talk to the client, talk about the workflows that they'd like to set up. We can design them with EBA linked into BEAM. And so maybe we have clients with a 3, 4, 5-step approval process in terms of how they manage all of those maintenance operations. We also offer a reporting tool. So you can get reports automatically within your inbox. You can also use our dashboard for KPI tracking. And so you're going to be able to keep up to date with all of the operations that are going on in the system. And as you can see, some of the feedback that we have received from current clients is that they were able to reduce between 15 and 20% of the maintenance costs. And also we even have clients who are able to reduce the number of failures that they were getting, which means the number of tickets that they were creating by 80%. So let's just take a quick look at the product. If you have any more questions after the webinar, we can also schedule another meeting with you and talk a little bit more in detail about the product. But let's just take a look at an overview here. So this is BEAM. I logged in as an admin user, which means I have access to the complete system. And the first thing we see is that there is this dashboard at the beginning. This is something that is customizable and also actionable. So if we have maybe like a list of people here, we could start selecting which employee we're going to take a look into, and maybe we can see the tickets that he's involved with and all of these KPIs, or maybe just all of these tracking that we'd like to perform. And here on the left side, we access the main menu. So we have here the access to the 4 core modules of the asset, maintenance, material, and personnel management modules. And then we also have access to the system settings. So for example, once we talk to a new client, we're going to transfer all of the information into the system. So whether BEAM runs standalone, and so we get the information uploaded via an Excel template, or whether we're integrating with another system, and so we just maybe use that other ERP as the master data, and we just connect to the system to retrieve all of the assets. What we're going to see is that we're going to be able to see the complete list of assets that are available in the system, in that we can manage all of these assets based on the location. So BEAM is a product that is that allows us to have different locations within the system. You're going to see here that I'm going to start opening all of these layers in here, so we can have the company itself, we can have operations, for example, one for New York, we can have cost centers, we can have departments, and then finally we can have the assets. But our clients can have as many layers as they'd like to have. And all of the assets, you'll see that we allow them to enter here lots of information. And the beauty of this product is that we can customize it to some extent. And so each client is going to be different. Everyone is going to want to see different fields in here. So apart from the common fields that are mandatory, the rest of them are going to be basically changing depending on the client. So we have people interested, clients interested on taking a look at the brand, the model, in terms of the assets that we are defining. Others, they want to see the warranty information. Others, they want to track the asset within a map. Others, they want to be able to list all of the materials that this asset is composed of. Maybe we can assign a maintenance team in here. So really, all of these sections are going to become available only if you need them. And if we also want to take a look at the assets, but in a different way, not just like with a list, we also have this functionality here to basically upload a layout or a blueprint of the facility. We can start placing all of our assets. So all of these dots are assets. And you see that if I hover over one of them, we can pull up information about it. If I click on it, then I can also create a ticket directly from this screen. So this basically is going to be updated in real time. It shows either the manager or the maintenance team what's going on, because right now everything is green, which means everything is okay. If suddenly one of these dots that represent assets, if they turn red, then we know there is an open ticket. If they turn blue, there is like a preventive maintenance work order going on, and so we can keep up to date with everything that's happening within the system. And so, for example, within the maintenance section, we're going to be able to create tickets. You're going to be able to say, okay, there is like this problem with this machine, or maybe if we are just using the preventive maintenance, then all of these work requests are going to be created automatically, and they're going to appear in our calendars, and we're going to be getting notifications to make sure that we take care of all of those requests. And also in terms of maintenance, just kind of like to go over these overview, I'd like to show you one of the reports that we can create within the system. So you see that every module has a report section, and we have some predefined packages in terms of reports, and then there are also going to be some customized reports that we can offer our clients to if they have some specific needs. And so, for example, we would be able to take a look at the asset history report, right? We could select the dates, like for example, let's go back to the beginning of the year. We could select one asset in particular, maybe a group, maybe one location, anything you like. You see that the options are a lot. So, for example, if I were to select like the transportation department in here, and I click on prepare, and just within a couple of seconds, I would get this report that is going to list all of the assets and all the times that they have been maintained. So, for example, this truck, it has been repaired a lot through these past year, and so maybe we want to take an educated guess or as like a decision saying we have spent like this much money. You see it here at the end. The total cost is just better to get a new one instead of keep spending all of this money on this asset. And just to show you the material section, we're going to be able to group all of our materials. We can do things like calculate the optimal minimum and maximum levels of stock. So if we are running low on any item, then we'll be able to make a purchasing maybe request from that notification. So that's not a module that is available, but we could make it available. We have that purchasing management module, and whenever we are running low, we're going to be getting notifications about this. So, for example, if we have all of our material groups in here, let's just make this bigger. If we want to take a look at maybe like truck parts, we have different warehouses. We can make transactions between these warehouses, and keep in mind that workflow that is running underneath is always going to be present to kind of like make it easier for the clients to customize that workflow and to let the system work exactly the way they are used to doing it right now, but in a digital environment. And within the personnel management module, we're basically going to be able to manage all of our resources. So we're going to have different users logging into Beam. We can either have a requester who's only creating tickets. We can have like the manager just opening reports and following up all the work that is done within the system. And obviously the maintenance team would be key also in terms of the usage of Beam, since they're going to be entering all of the work that they do and how much time they spend on any operation within the system. And so that's kind of like the overview of Beam. If you have any further questions, you know that we have the chat open, so you can type them, and I'm going to just go back to the presentation so that we can wrap it up. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, much appreciated. Well, it's been actually a very rich webinar for all of our audience. That's for sure. But with the coming regulations about asset management, we talk about how to manage assets and maintenance operations digitally. So we address many different subjects in general. So as you see, we have our contact information on the screen right now. So for future reference, if you like to contact any of the presenters, please feel free to do so. And in this session, we have some questions for our presenters. For instance, one of them happens to be about ERP integrations. Looks like it is for you, Grayson. What kind of ERP integrations have you done with Beam, with asset and maintenance management? Grayson, can you address this question?
Yes, we've integrated Beam with Sage Intacct, Sage X3, and also Microsoft Nav. All three of those are fully integrated with Beam right now.
Great. That's definitely good on the ERP system. And we have another question. Let's see. It is about the mobile app. Is there a mobile app available for Beam? And can I access all the tasks on the mobile app? Itya, it looks like this is for you.
Yeah, so for example, whenever we are talking about any of our products, they all have a mobile application available. It's in the Play Store and also the Apple Store, Google Play and Apple Store, sorry. And so, for example, in terms of Beam, what they can do is log into the app. They can see there all of the tasks that they have to complete. They can see the status of the requests that they have made. You can also create a ticket, take a picture of the failure, upload it to Beam. You can access all of the modules from the mobile app, and it's very useful, especially to the maintenance team, because they're not going to be working on an office setting. They just keep moving around, and so having that access to Beam that also works offline, by the way, it's very helpful for them.
Thank you, Itya. Let's see another question that we have. We have two questions for Mike and John. So the one of them happens to be, what is the best source to read and learn about these coming new regulations about asset management? That is the question one. And question two is there any exception for non-profit organization in terms of coming regulations? Yeah.
Yeah. Hi. So the best place to read about. I mean, there's been a lot of publications put out. I know a lot of the what I'll call the big four. Your PwC, EY, and other firms have put out a lot of white papers, if you will, about the topic. You could always dive right into the guidance. I mean, you can go onto the AICPA website and access the Financial Accounting Standards codifications. It's, again, ASC 842. And as a firm, we also have a lot of literature out there about the topic. I think we gave a dedicated webinar just solely to this, and we will continue to do so as we move more towards the implementation period of calendar year 2020, since a lot of our clients are fiscal year calendar clients, December 31st. But again, you can go online, you could search for new accounting codification, and you'll see some big 4 publications that are out there. Again, we have a lot of stuff out there regarding it if you visit our website, and also you could delve right into the guidance itself, which should be listed on the AICPA website if you find the Accounting Standards Board codifications.
Great. Thank you, John. And the second question is there any exception, any immunity for nonprofit organizations in terms of assets management?
Off the top of my head, it's a good question, Kevin. Off the top of my head, I don't believe so. I don't deal a whole lot in that practice area, so it's something I would certainly have to get back to you on if it's something specific. I mean, our contact information is listed there. If you want to shoot me, or whoever raised the question wants to shoot me a quick email, we'd be happy to address. Off the top of my head, I'm just not certain. I don't believe there was a lot of stuff scoped out of this particular, but I again, without it right in front of me, I just wouldn't be able to comment on it.
Absolutely, that is fine. Well, thank you very much for the answers. What we are doing actually sharing what we know, in a nutshell, in general, basically. So for any detailed information or further conversation, any of our audience attendees can contact us, via email or by phone simply. Our contact information on the screen, so we can definitely take the conversation further. So it looks like I have shared all the questions that I have received. I just wanna definitely make sure if I have anything else that I'm missing. It looks like we addressed all the questions that we have received. So I would like to thank you for being our presenter today. Much appreciated. Great insights and very important information for all the businesses, both on the regulation and also definitely for the maintenance management part in a digital sense. Thank you very much for your participation as our presenters. And also I'd like to thank our attendees for following our webinar. Thank you very much for your time and interest. Please don't forget that we have another webinar coming up tomorrow with regards to ISO 9001 and 2015. As we all know, it has some new rules and practices coming with the new version of this ISO. So we'll address those new practices during tomorrow's webinar. So we also look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Please register. And thank you very much for your time. Looking forward to seeing you in our coming webinars. Have a nice day. Thank you.